Hi there, my name's Steve, and you are listening, watching, tuned into the Go Football podcast. So, this is the podcast that talks all about grassroots football. Whether you are a parent, a player, coach, referee, just got love for the game, just sit tight, you're in the right place. So, this week we are going to be talking about friendly games and the pre-season games that are going ahead at the moment. What do you get out of them? What are you looking for? Where's some points and tips for you too? So, let's cue the whistle and let's get into it. A massive thank you, though, before we do get started, to Rush Sportswear for the tops. Listen, we've not got long until we're going to be heading into that season now. Look, the EFL, Premier League are about to kick off too. You know, all these seasons are about to kick off, and so are Grassroots. So head over to Rush Sportswear. You'll still be able to get your top shorts, full kits, absolutely everything. Head over there. The links are in the bio, and let's get into the show. So let's get started now. Episode 30. This is good. This is really good. I'm enjoying these at the moment. And look, 30 episodes in. Thanks everyone for continuing to watch. I don't know if anyone's looked at any of the socials recently as well, but you know, about 84% of people that are listening to the Go Football podcast are from the UK. And then we've got a bit of a band that goes out from there too. So Australia, if you know anyone from Australia that's listening, thank you very much. Please email in, let me know what football's like over there for you guys. Same as over in the States, you know, quite a few in the States. Obviously Ireland that are coming in there, but then there's a few other countries that are also in there too. Spain, France, Belgium, they're all coming in there too. So listen, honestly, thank you very much. And, you know, feel free, just get in touch with me, gofootballpod@gmail.com. You come straight through to me and I'll always take whatever comes in there as well. I might read some of it out, but, you know, generally I get some really nice feedback and I'm really loving that. So yeah, thanks for all that, everyone. So listen, what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about warm-up games for your pre-season, what you get out of them, what happens. I mean, generally they're all known as friendlies. I mean, look, the leagues have all started now, haven't they, as well? And I'm talking about, you know, EFL. I think Premier League's not quite started yet. Still quite a few friendlies that are going on there that we can watch. But look, there's a lot of friendlies that they're still going ahead with. But it did make me think yesterday, after my team got absolutely drummed and sit currently bottom of the championship, what was the point of all the warm-up games and what was the point and what were we trying to get out of all these games? And like, how does that transfer into grassroots? You know, like, look, the professional games are a lot different. We understand that. Everyone gets that. But what are we using these warm-up games for in our pre-seasons and what we're getting out of these friendlies? What do we do them for? You know, I suppose there's a number of reasons why we do. And there's a couple of good pointers that I think that we can cover today in the actual session of the podcast. And we'll just have a quick look and see what kind of works, what kind of doesn't, and just some pointers really for maybe for some coaches. I mean, hopefully I can help a coach or two, and also players. Hopefully I can help a player and as well as a coach. You know, same as the referees. Now, listen, referees, they've been out of it for a little bit. Thanks everyone that listened last week to the referees episode. You know, I always enjoy doing the referee ones as well. A bit of booing, bit of this, bit of that. You know, it's quite fun to do those ones and see why and what it is that happens with referees. So yeah, go back and listen to that one if you can. But yeah, I think, look, the reason why we need to have these friendly games and the reason why they're so important, and people just call it a whole pre-season, but, you know, it's great having a pre-season, but if they're just games that you're playing with no real kind of thought about the plan of what it is that we're trying to achieve, pretty pointless games, really. You know, we just get a bit of a run out, aren't you? That's all you're really getting. Look, for me, look, running them, they're kind of they're a great way of just seeing where everyone is fitness wise. I think that's always a really important thing to look at. You know, always take more players than what you need if you can do. When you're setting your friendlies up, make sure you've got enough players that everyone can kind of go everywhere. I would say that friendly games, you know, you're probably looking for an action pack sort of like pre-season, if you like, with all these friendly games that are coming in. Maybe 4 or 5 games is probably enough as a coach to see what you need to do, especially if you're going to have some sessions in there. Now, I refereed a game today. And the players that had been in there broke up before the school's finished. So they've not trained or anything really for about 7 weeks, something like that. Yeah, it's a long time for them. And last season they were an unbeaten team. So I was told today, and they had some different agendas as to what they were looking for, really. What you could really tell is, you know, fitness level really, really down from those guys, especially from what the coach was saying. Yeah, fitness levels was really down. These were under 16s, should be able to keep themselves fit, but yeah, that's one reason why we're doing these games. But what else can we get out of them, really? For me, it's about match sharpness. Now, there's nothing like playing in a game. Training sessions are great. And also, football practice is great. Look, you go in there, and a lot of the time, as long as you've got good objectives for it, they're always going to be useful. But you never really get the sharpness of playing in a game until you are playing in games. Like, it's great to have the small sided games, more touches, more goals, more time on the ball, more time of like working with, in a very, very smaller kind of setting with the players in your team. But nothing like match sharpness of just things like timing of the ball as well. And, you just think like how many times is the ball going up in the air in training, apart from the game section that you might have as well. It's not going to be too many sessions where you're doing where the ball's just up in the air, but in a game, it happens over and over and over. And it's just really learning who can play in what position. Like the teams today, I noticed that both teams were both rotating their players round, which was great, in different positions, which was great. And they both had enough subs. And that was all good too. But I also think that, this match sharpness is definitely one thing that we should be looking for, and that's why you want to go and get it. Now, are you going to get sharper against a team that sits below you in the leagues? Not always. I would say that if you have the opportunity in your 5 games, pick a team that is going to be a massive struggle. And sometimes you can look at those in different ways. You can look at like, what's the challenge going to be? So, for example, my under 14 boys, first warm-up game that they had a few weeks ago, purposely selected a team that were a year up and played Division 1. So that was going to be a really tough challenge for us because we were the smaller lads that were on the pitch. We had a couple that were kind of matching the size of them as well. But look, when you're playing a year up at under 14s and you're playing under 15s, there's actually quite a big difference between some of the lads that were there. And it was a game that we knew was going to be really physical. So what did we look at getting out of that game? We looked at, can we have a good physical battle in that game? And that's what we took out of that game. The results to me, in these friendly games, in these warm-up games, is kind of irrelevant. In fact, sometimes you even see like Premier League teams playing against much lower league teams, and it's not a rollover. It's not like, if it was in the FA Cup and those two teams met, it might be, we might be looking at double digits or a severely weakened team still playing really well. But sometimes you see some of these teams come in and they'll be like, I don't know, like a conference team or just above a conference team playing against a team that is, much higher quality and got much quality players there, and there's not much of a difference. But yeah, look, I honestly think that, bursts of pace, tackling under pressure, reaction time, thinking about just discovering also that just the rhythm of your team, really important to have that. And I suppose that's just something that really good to say to your players. This is what we're looking at in this game. Also in these games, you've got some tactical testing that we can do, and I know that sometimes with the 5-a-sides and 7-a-side, 9-a-side, you might be thinking less about tactics. Really, you can use loads of tactics with those age groups. But the tactics just look different. That's all that they do as well. So, I mean, like, would you consider changing your shape to a 4-3-3? Would that work for your team? Would you be able to play in things like quarters? So I always love playing in quarters because there's an extra intervention that's in there. So as a coach, you get the players to sit down, you can talk about it, and you can change things really quick. So you might go and say, this quarter is all about low block. This quarter is all about high press. This quarter, we're going to change the shape and see how that works for us and see how players react differently in this one. That's really good to be able to have some tactical testing and also maybe some different tactics regarding things like corners, because it's hard to always be able to practice corners, especially in real environments against real players. So look, today we're going to play, every time we get corners, we're going to try, here's 3 things that we're going to do. We're going to try all these things so we can practice them in a real game situation and see who picks up on what. If you're going to go short for it, make sure your players are out there quick to go for it and not just jogging out like they might do if it was a normal training session. Those kind of things would be good. And also, where can we find overloads in the game? Can we be able to use some tactics of where can we find something and make space in different ways? They're all really good to have in these warm-up games, and that's something else. But ultimately, the biggest thing for me is there's 2 things really, I suppose, two biggest things, should I say. So let's say that building chemistry, really, really important, because you may have, and look, we're still in that window now where not everyone's kind of signed or know what team they're going to. I mean, unfortunately, there'll be some clubs that will probably fold, and there'll be some clubs that are probably just about going to survive that could do with a few extra players that are going there, and that's going to happen a little bit, but that'll help us build a bit of team chemistry. And I think that's so important in these games. before you kick off in your season, that you can see who's going to go in what position and what works really well for you. And it might not be the shape and the positions that you're all thinking worked last season for you. Maybe something different will work this season, and that might be that you've got someone who is extra talkative, who's really supportive in the team. You might have a few players that have sort of like developed slightly differently in the last 12 months. Maybe they were naturally going to say, maybe they were going to be a right or left back. Now they're going to be playing further forwards, and they're more in that forward right, or just right of the centre forward. Maybe they're going to be playing in those kind of positions too. Maybe you've got some players that all of a sudden over the summer they've just seemed to have grown and got really fit over the summer, and you might be thinking, well, gosh, we always used to play them in this position as well. Maybe going forwards now they're going to be a really good, strong threat, because as children adapt and change and they get older, their bodies change and develop too. And maybe they were a little bit clumsy last year because their body was starting to go through its growth spurts, but it's all of a sudden they're at that end of that actual growth spurt now too, and maybe they've grown 6 inches and got, they're twice as fast as what they were, and they're not clumsy with the ball, and they're not falling over their own feet anymore. And then we might need to move them around, and that's great because the team chemistry, you can move people around and just work out who's going to fit best in your team, especially if you've got new people coming in too, and give everyone a bit of a chance round. So, but I also think this is the other good thing that you can get from these friendly games as well, and that's just like mental confidence. And I really think that is one of the main things to get out of it. A solid 90 minutes or 80 minutes or 70 minutes, depending on the age group. I think that's really good. Like when you go training and you might have a 90-minute session. Like my boys, they have a 90-minute session. But we can't do, it's not the same as 90 minutes on a pitch. It's just not. The runs are different, the movement's different, everything like that. So, for example, my last training session before the warm-up game we had this week was all about identifying and playing in forward runs. So we were looking at things similar to like straight pass, diagonal run, straight pass, those kind of things. Can we identify when we've maybe there's been a transition or we're moving away with the ball? Can we just identify that? Can we have our heads up? Can we identify the run, where the play is going to be, and can we also do it to keep on side? So we actually played an end zone game for about 40-50 minutes, and it was just identify. Like everything, you could only score points if you were identifying one of those runs and someone's making a run and touching it within one touch before running out of space on the other side. Do you know what? Our first goal at the weekend, there we go. Diagonal run, straight pass. Perfectly. Eyes up, saw the pass. Great. So it's great to be able to do that. But I don't think there's anything that really replicates your time on the pitch in the same way. Because training sessions, like say, for coaches, it's great, but there's lots of intervention that you can put in there. But, just being able to have the whole pitch and playing against a team just makes, you're looking at sharpness, you're looking at your tactics, building your chemistry, and also getting a good solid 90 minutes as well of just confidence on the pitch. But also, look, this is the last thing, and this is something that you've all got to be able to identify. And this is not just coaches. This is, this is also parents, also massive part in this, as well as players, is just identify the issues that you've got nice and early on. Okay, so if you've got someone, let's say you're playing with midfielders, but you're playing with midfielders and you may be only playing with one because you're playing slightly different shape to normal, or you're playing with a number 10, but your number 10 is always dropping further back than your CDMs. Maybe you need to be thinking, is that a right option? Do we need to get that player further forwards? Can we identify that? And also, why is he dropping so deep? Is he dropping deep because CDM's not dropping back further? We can identify these problems. And I really think that you have to be able to do that really quick. Like, do we have a right back or a left back that's not tracking runs or something along those lines? They're all things that we can kind of look at from these friendly games, especially if you're lucky enough to be able to record them. You can look at all these early issues and you can stamp those out and you can correct them really quick. And, the best way to do it is, they always say, don't you, you learn from your mistakes more than you learn from getting it right all the time. And that's why maybe go for teams that are a little bit harder to play, maybe an age group up if you've got that availability, even if they are maybe a couple of leagues down. So it's you're kind of in the same range that you would both get something out of the game. That'd probably be really good. So the common pitfalls that we generally get within these these friendlies and these warm-up games too. So look, I think that one thing that definitely happens is players just going in way too intense to begin with. It's not the FA Cup final. The Euros has already ended. We already brought the trophy home for that as well. We don't need to go absolutely full on like that. Now, one, we don't want to risk any injuries, and secondly, what we don't want to do is injure anyone else that's on the pitch too, because we don't want everyone's season, don't we? We want it all to start nicely for everyone. And that's not the purpose of these games. So going in too intense. The other thing is, if you've not had games for a little while, or you're not been playing games very often, you'll find that you need that sharpness first. So, going in absolutely full pelt for absolutely every single challenge, whilst you might be a really competitive person and think that's the only way to play, sometimes, how many times do we see let's say two Premier League teams mid-table, not going to switch positions, last game of the season? How many times do they pull out of challenges, the players? Because they're just thinking, I've got a holiday in a couple of weeks. I don't want to be sat with a physio all this time. So, yeah, they're pulling out of challenges because the league position's not going to go up or down or anything like that. You see that. And that's something maybe to encourage your players to kind of do. And also, as a coach, just think, yes, you want to be able to play with, passion. You want to be able to play with all those things, but doesn't mean that you need to go in too intense with it. And I think that another common thing and another common pitfall that we generally get, especially with these friendly games, really is that you stick to your usual 11. Don't stick to your usual 11. These are times where you can rotate players, you can vary positions, you can throw in trialists all the time. You can see what sticks, you can see what works, you can see what's wrong for your team, and you can identify all these things. If you stick with the same 11 that you've already got, it's kind of the only 11 that you're going to get. You might as well give all the players maybe not quite equal playing time, but if they want to play a little bit more intense, then yeah, you can make them play a little bit more intense. But at the same time, you can also just bring in some extra players and players that maybe aren't going to get as much game time during the whole season. Maybe let them come in too and try them in some other positions. Because if they're ones that are normally sat on the sidelines, looking on, they could be going into any other position. If you've got an injury, someone's not available one week as well, throw them into like 3 or 4 different positions during the game. If you're playing in quarters as well, chuck them in a different quarter, put them in a different position. Be absolutely great. Yeah, stick him. I think that one for me is to avoid is just sticking with your standard 11. Let your players rotate around a little bit. What you'll always find is that some players probably play a little bit better. Now, there was always that argument for England, weren't there, as well, with Gerrard and Lampard. You can't play both at the same time because it just didn't kind of work. Well, look, for me, and I know I might get a little bit hassled for this as well, but definitely would have played Gareth Barry at the same time, because I think that he would have been a great solution to them two being attacking players and him holding a little bit more. I definitely think that would have been a better blend for me. Now, look, let us know what your thoughts are on that too. I'm sure that a couple of people are going to say no, and I'm not saying if I was going to pick Gerrard or Lampard, by the way, either. But it just gives you a chance where you can throw your players in some different opportunities, in different roles, in different positions, and also see who's talking to who, see who communicates. Sometimes some players, they just click, and it's not because they're the best 3 or 4 on the pitch, but they just know when one of them's running, when one of them's moving, when someone's getting the ball, where the ball's going to get played. You often see, don't you, like someone saying like, oh, great service for your number 9. Sometimes they love that player, maybe not so great, but maybe they just look up and they can just play the perfect ball in all the time. Maybe they're just not ball winners, or there's something else about them that you may be thinking they're not the best player in that position, but for that player being able to set something, and that chemistry is great. So yeah, don't stick to your normal 11. Rotate round, throw some extra players in there, throw some trialists, and if you've got them, especially if they're coming from some other clubs. And I think this is something else that is often overlooked in these friendly games as well, is that there's probably not enough follow up for them. And I don't mean like a full on review. We're not looking for Sky Sports here or anything like that to come in and analyse every single thing that you're doing. But we can adjust each team's, you can adjust things like your warm-ups, you can adjust things like, what do we learn from today? That's the main thing, is it? What do we learn? Well, we probably learn we need to track players back more. We probably learned that going forwards, we're massively overloaded and we've got loads of defenders back, so we're never able to break out there. Or did we learn that when we do clear the ball, we kind of just take a steady jog out and we play every single player on side, and we were felt like we were under more pressure because of that. They're all the things that we can kind of follow up and kind of learn from too. And I think that they're the kind of pitfalls that you get is by not learning by them and not giving enough feedback or thinking about feedback. And coaches, where you can get loads of feedback from, get it from your players. And I'm even talking like under 10s, under 11s, under 12s. If they can tell you what's happening or why they think certain things are happening, guarantee they'll learn loads quicker from it. It's like every time you ask them a question, if you answer it for them, they're never going to have to think themselves. If you ask them a question and they have to learn it themselves, or they can give you the answer, they're probably going to learn it a load quicker. So, and do you know what? Generally, and I've coached boys and girls as well. Girls loads better at it. Honestly, girls are so much better. They will just instantly pick up on why we did this, we did that. Way more I suppose self-critical, maybe that's the right word for them as well. But yeah, maybe they have more awareness of what is going on. But yeah, they're able to answer questions and think of questions and come out with the right answers almost straight away for it. So yeah, absolutely, there are a couple of the things. Now, what should we also look? What's some practical tips? These are just a couple of tips that I'm going to throw in. I'm just going to throw in like 3 or 4, something like that. For coaches and both players as well. But again, parents, just take a look, see what you think of this. I think that every game needs to have a set clear goal of what you're trying to achieve. That could be, right, this game we are going to play out from the back lots of it as well. We want to be able to invite pressure on, and we're going to look at playing around and playing through as opposed to playing over, into, onto, or beyond. We're going to look at all those different things. Or can we, control the middle with 2 pivot players? Are we able to come back and really make these players turn heads up, and are we able to play forward quickly? Are we going to be thinking about counter-attacks, of how we can counter-attack and who's going to counter-attack, and the shape and position of all those things? So if we're thinking about shape and position, and it was great, when you've got things like VO, it's great. Obviously, there's loads of other things as well. I think Xbox are about to put their Falcon out, and there's chameleons and all sorts of different things. But if you've ever got the option to look back, just look at where the players are. Don't watch the game, don't watch the ball, watch the players, and just take some pictures in your head of this is where all the players are, and this is where I needed them to be. And then you can go to each player and say, listen, right back, you needed to be, you need to be further up, okay? Because there's the wrong kind of angle. We want to be able to play past 3 of these players, and we can't play past 3 of them. We're playing with us back to goal otherwise. So yeah, a couple of things like that maybe as well. Set some really, really clear goals. My goals for the game at the weekend, for example, I had 2 goals. That was it. One was, I've already mentioned it as well, which was, can we play and identify forward runs and play the ball in? So that was one, and we scored from one. So yeah, it kind of worked from the training session we did. The second one is, can we talk more, be more communicate more, and can we, every time we're passing the ball or every time we've got the ball, can we pass it on with an instruction? So I gave the lads look on the training session before that. Just think of everything that you could maybe say. So man on is obviously some of the main ones. Turn, time. There's loads of different things. But if we're communicating more and we're passing the ball on with an instruction, it makes it easy for that player that's receiving the ball. If we're looking safe side on your left, or safe side on your right, or whatever it is, means that we're probably going to be able to keep the ball. We're giving more opportunities, but as a team, that team chemistry is going to get much better. So yeah, clear objectives, I definitely think, are one of the main things that you need to look at from these games. And I think rotating deliberately. I think that you really need to just rotate some of your players, rotate some formations. Look, through this season, you're probably going to have to change formations and shape a little bit. You can't just play with the same formation for me, because you come up against different teams that are different attributes. You'll play some teams that are technically very good. You'll play some teams that are probably less technical, but probably got very fast, very strong players in there. And that's why you're all in the same league. It's like 2 different games that you're playing. You need to have your tactics there. So yeah, just rotate them around, but also make sure the games that you get in pre-season and these friendlies, warm-up games, they are the ones that are going to give you those challenges for your players. So let's just get into the final thoughts. Let's just end the episode with a couple of a bit of a summary then, really, just on what we've been talking around in this episode 30. Look, honestly, I'm still loving it. Please email in. Just if you see us on any of the socials, again, give it a little like, give it a little follow, give it a little share. That'd be amazing if you could do. Email gofootballpod@gmail.com. Listen, final thoughts then. So let's just sum this up then, really. Look, these warm-up games, these friendlies, they are not just filler games, okay? We can learn so much from them. Coaches, you can learn so much from your players. Players, you can learn a lot about the other players on the pitch. and also your coach, and about the support that you're going to get from the sidelines. You can get all of that all from these games. We can get really sharp from them. We can look at tactics. We can make sure we rotate around, that we can play different shapes, different formations. Maybe we need different tactics for different games, because maybe some of the games you're going to play in, they're going to be against really physical teams that are really strong. And then you might play against other teams that are very, very tactical. Though you might seem to play against teams that always play every ball over the top or on the floor. So, you get all that chance to play these in these games and try and get a varied amount of teams that you can play, different levels, different abilities, and different things about them and their gameplay of how they play too. I think that'd be really good if you can do that, because let's say these are all about learning. So just make sure we're giving feedback. We're not playing with too much intensity that we're going to get injured, because no one wants an injury before we even start the season or anything like that. So that's what I would say is part of the tactics, and part of the final thoughts that we should have for these games is, don't use them as filler games. Don't use them as just a bit of a run out for a bit, getting a little bit of rust or game rust taken off you or anything like that. Just use them with some clear objectives, some clear goals, so that when you do start the season, you've got everything that you need to be able to, play competitively against a physical team and a tactical team, and maybe a team that's got players that are all bigger than what your team are, or maybe all faster than what you are. So you can change your tactics accordingly, and you know what works, why it works, and who can play what positions against different players and different teams. There's sometimes where I've had players that have played centre mid, or they've played wide, and I've put them in as left back, right back, because they've got some players that are lightning quick or very, very strong. So I've matched my players up against them, and they've played in other positions, and that's worked absolutely wonders. So yeah, use these games for all of these different things. So look, thanks very much for coming back and listening to episode 30. Look, going to start up episode 31 next week as well. Didn't realise it had come around that quick, but we've got some more things in the pipeline. Please email in as well, gofootballpod@gmail.com, and I will see you all, or you'll hear from you all next week.